I'm Mason Reynolds, 32 years old, born into a family that built houses before I could even walk. After 15 years of sweat and dedication to Reynolds Construction, my parents' words cut deeper than any construction accident ever could. You're not leadership material, Mason. Just like that. The family business I helped build was handed to my younger brother on a silver platter. Before I tell you how I turned this betrayal into my greatest triumph, let me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more stories about standing your ground when family lets you down. Some of my earliest memories involve the smell of sawdust and the rhythmic pounding of hammers. Reynolds Construction wasn't just my father's business, it was our family legacy. Dad started the company with nothing but a pickup truck, a toolbox, and determination. By the time I was 10, he was already teaching me the basics. See how this joint fits together, Mason? Dad would say, kneeling beside me at job sites after school. That's craftsmanship. That's the Reynolds difference. While other kids played video games, I was learning how to read blueprints and calculate material requirements. My hands grew callous before I hit puberty, but I never complained. There was something deeply satisfying about creating something tangible, something that would stand for decades after we were gone. High school was a balancing act between maintaining decent grades and spending every spare moment at construction sites. My teachers didn't understand why I'd rush out the minute the bell rang. But I had bigger plans than college prep. I was getting a real-world education that no classroom could provide. You sure about this, son? Dad asked when I told him I wanted to skip college and join the business full-time after graduation. Construction's a tough life. I'm sure, Dad. This is what I want. I know this business inside and out already. At 18, while my classmates were heading off to universities, I officially became a full-time employee at Reynolds Construction. Not that it felt much different. I'd been working nearly full-time hours since I was 16 anyway. The only change was the paycheck, which was modest but fair. I never expected special treatment as the owner's son. I made it my mission to learn every single aspect of the business. I started with the basics: framing, roofing, electrical, plumbing, getting my hands dirty alongside our crews. Next came materials management, learning how to order supplies efficiently and negotiate with vendors. Client relations followed, where I discovered I had a natural ability to connect with people and translate their vague ideas into concrete plans. Mom handled the financial side of things. Catherine Reynolds was as sharp with numbers as Dad was with a hammer. She taught me enough accounting to understand the business side, but my real passion was in the field. You've got good instincts, she told me once. But don't forget that buildings are built on paper before they're built on land. Trevor, my younger brother by 4 years, took a different path. While I was climbing ladders and pouring foundations, he was focused on academics. He'd stop by job sites occasionally during summer breaks from high school, but his heart wasn't in the physical work. He'd stand around in clean clothes, checking his phone while I was covered in dirt and sweat. College is the future, Mason, he'd say with that smug smile of his. No offense, but I'm aiming higher than hammering nails. I never held it against him. Different strokes for different folks, right? When Trevor went off to get his business degree, I was already becoming Dad's right-hand man. By my mid-20s, I was the unofficial second in command. The workers respected me because I could do every job I asked them to do. And I never shied away from the tough tasks. Mason's got the touch, I overheard one of our veteran carpenters tell a new hire. He knows this business from the ground up. Old man Reynolds can retire easy knowing his son's got things handled. My first major independent project came when I was 26. Dad handed me the keys to a commercial renovation job for a local law firm. 3 months, $500,000 budget, and complete autonomy. Sink or swim time, Dad said with a wink. Show me what you've got. I delivered that project 2 weeks early and $15,000 under budget. The client was so impressed they referred 3 more businesses to us within the year. Dad clapped me on the shoulder at the wrap-up meeting, his eyes shining with pride. "That's my boy," he said. Nothing had ever felt better than those 3 simple words. By the time Trevor graduated with his MBA and decided to join the family business, I had 7 years of full-time experience under my belt and had personally managed over 20 major projects. Reynolds Construction had become synonymous with quality in our region, and I took enormous pride in that reputation. Trevor arrived with a leather briefcase and ideas from business school textbooks. I welcomed him with open arms, ready to show him the ropes of the business he'd studied but never truly experienced. "Things are going to change around here," he announced during his first week. "I've got big plans." I just smiled and handed him a hard hat. "Welcome aboard, little brother. Let's build something great together." Little did I know that his arrival was the first nail in the coffin of everything I'd worked for. For 14 years, I poured everything I had into Reynolds Construction. My contribution went far beyond simply showing up and doing the work. I transformed the company from a small local contractor into a regional powerhouse. When I first started full-time, we were still tracking jobs with paper invoices and handwritten schedules. By my second year, I'd convinced Dad to invest in construction management software that streamlined everything from bidding to completion. He was skeptical at first, old school to the core, but when he saw how it reduced errors and increased efficiency, he became a convert. "Never thought I'd see the day when I'd trust a computer more than my notebook," he admitted. "Good call, son." Supplier relationships were my specialty. I made it a point to know everyone personally. Not just the sales reps, but the yard workers, delivery drivers, and warehouse managers. Those connections paid dividends during the lumber shortage of 2017 when other contractors were struggling to source materials. "Mr. Delgado," I said to our main lumber supplier during that crisis, "I know inventory is tight, but we've got the Westfield project starting next week. Is there any way you could help us out?" "For you, Mason? I'll see what I can do," he replied. 2 days later, 3 trucks of premium lumber arrived at our job site while competitors were being told there was a 6-week wait. Training was another area where I made my mark. Too many construction companies treated new hires as disposable, but I knew better. I developed a comprehensive training program that paired rookies with veterans, reducing accidents and improving quality. "This is how we build the Reynolds way," became our unofficial motto. Safety, quality, and efficiency, in that order. The 2008 recession nearly wiped out half the contractors in our region, but we survived because of relationships I built with local banks and our reputation for delivering on time and on budget. While Dad was panicking about our dwindling project pipeline, I was securing small renovation jobs that kept our core team employed. "We just need to weather the storm," I told him during one particularly stressful meeting. "If we lay off our best people, we'll never recover when things turn around." 60 to 70-hour weeks became my norm during those lean years. I'd be on site at 6 in the morning and in the office until 9 at night, reviewing bids and cutting costs wherever possible without sacrificing quality. My social life evaporated, and my first serious relationship collapsed under the weight of my commitment to the family business. "You're married to that company," Jessica said the night she left. "There's no room for me." She wasn't wrong, but at the time, I believed the sacrifice was worth it. Reynolds Construction wasn't just a job, it was my future, my legacy. When the economy recovered, we were one of the few contractors who hadn't compromised our standards or lost our best workers. Business boomed. I developed an innovative foundation system for homes built on difficult terrain that became our signature offering, more stable, better insulated, and more cost-effective than traditional methods. The Reynolds Foundation System, Dad called it, though it was entirely my creation after months of research and testing. He was proud, and that was enough for me. Our annual revenue grew from $1.5 million when I started to over $12 million by my 30th birthday. We expanded from residential construction into commercial projects, medical facilities, and even won a contract to build a new municipal building in our hometown. Through it all, Dad would occasionally drop hints about the future. "Someday this will all be yours," he'd say, gesturing around a job site. "You're building more than buildings, Mason. You're building your future." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I'd given everything to the company. Turned down offers from competitors, worked holidays and weekends, and put the business ahead of my personal life at every turn. The succession plan seemed obvious to everyone, from our employees to our clients. Then Trevor graduated with his MBA and joined the company. Initially, our different skill sets complemented each other well. Trevor had a knack for marketing and brought in some fresh ideas for growing our client base. I handled operations and actual project execution. Dad seemed pleased with the arrangement, and for a while it worked. But tensions began to surface. Trevor would make promises to clients that our crews couldn't realistically deliver, creating friction between us. "You can't just tell the Hendersons we can add another 500 square feet without adjusting the timeline," I explained after one particularly frustrating client meeting. The client wanted it, so I made it happen. Trevor shot back. "That's how you grow a business. You find a way to say yes. That's how you ruin a reputation, by saying yes and then failing to deliver." These disagreements became more frequent as Trevor settled into his role. He'd attend networking events and Chamber of Commerce meetings while I managed the actual projects that kept the lights on. Somehow, in Dad's eyes, Trevor's activities began to take on more importance than the core work I was handling. "Your brother's bringing in some exciting opportunities," Dad mentioned during a family dinner. "He's really thinking big picture." I bit my tongue, but the implication stung. What had I been doing for the past 14 years if not thinking about the big picture of Reynolds Construction? Still, I never imagined what was coming. Even as the warning signs flashed before me, I remained loyal, dedicated, and certain that my contributions would ultimately be recognized and rewarded. I couldn't have been more wrong. The call came on a Thursday evening as I was finishing up paperwork in my office. "Your mother and I want to have dinner tomorrow night," Dad said. "Family meeting. Important business to discuss." "Everything okay?" I asked, instantly concerned about his health. He was pushing 65, and though still active, he'd been talking about slowing down. "Everything's fine. Just time to talk about the future." 7 o'clock at our place. I arrived at my parents' house 5 minutes early, as was my habit. Their sprawling ranch-style home had been built by Reynolds Construction 15 years earlier, one of our showcase projects that had won a regional design award. I'd personally overseen the finish work, making sure every detail was perfect for my parents. Mom greeted me at the door with a kiss on the cheek. "Trevor's already here," she said, her tone oddly formal. In the dining room, Trevor sat at the table looking unusually professional in a button-down shirt, his laptop open beside him. Dad stood by the fireplace, a tumbler of scotch in hand. "Have a seat, son," he said, gesturing to the chair across from Trevor. Throughout dinner, conversation felt strained. We discussed current projects and market conditions, but there was an underlying tension that made me increasingly uneasy. When Mom brought out coffee and her famous apple pie, Dad finally cleared his throat. "As you boys know, I've been thinking about retirement," he began. "Catherine and I want to do some traveling while we still have our health. And it's time to pass the torch." My heart quickened. This was it, the conversation I'd been expecting for years. The succession plan that would formalize my role as the next leader of Reynolds Construction. Dad continued, "We've given this a lot of thought, considered all the angles, and made what we believe is the best decision for the company's future." He looked at Trevor and nodded slightly. Trevor tapped a key on his laptop and turned it toward me. A PowerPoint slide appeared with the title, "Reynolds Construction, Strategic Succession Plan. We're excited to announce." Trevor said in a practiced voice. That I'll be stepping into the CEO position when Dad retires next year. We've already filed the paperwork to transfer controlling interest to me, with a minority share remaining with Mom and Dad for the next 5 years. The room seemed to tilt sideways. I looked from Trevor to Dad to Mom, waiting for someone to explain that this was some kind of joke. What about me? I finally managed to ask, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. Dad set down his glass. Mason, you'll remain a valuable part of the leadership team. We're creating a new position for you, Senior Project Manager. You'll oversee all field operations. Reporting to Trevor. I don't understand, I said. I've been running this company alongside you for 14 years. Trevor's been here for what, 3 years? Mostly in an office pushing papers? That's exactly the problem. Mom interjected, her business voice taking over. The company needs professional management to continue growing. Trevor has the education and vision to take Reynolds Construction to the next level. And I don't? I asked incredulously. Dad sighed heavily. You're excellent at what you do, Mason. The best project manager we've ever had. But you're just not leadership material. Modern business requires formal education, strategic thinking, corporate connections, things Trevor brings to the table. Just not leadership material. I repeated, the words falling like blows. Do you have any idea what I've contributed to this company? Who brought us through the recession? Who developed the foundation system that's now 30% of our business? Who built relationships with every major supplier and subcontractor in the region? Trevor leaned forward. Those are all operational achievements, Mason. I'm talking about strategic direction, expanding into new markets, possibly franchising our model. Maybe even going public eventually. With what experience? I demanded. Have you ever actually completed a project from start to finish? Have you ever had to tell a crew of 12 men that we need to work through the weekend to meet a deadline? Do you even know how to read a detailed blueprint? I don't need to. Trevor replied with maddening calmness. That's what people like you are for. My job is to see the big picture. Mom pulled out a folder filled with spreadsheets and charts. We've analyzed everyone's strengths and weaknesses objectively. Trevor's business acumen and strategic vision align with where the company needs to go. Objectively? I laughed bitterly. There's nothing objective about ignoring 14 years of proven leadership to hand the company to someone because they have an MBA framed on their wall. That's enough, Dad said sharply. This decision wasn't made lightly. We've consulted with business advisors and industry experts. The succession plan is final. Trevor had the audacity to look sympathetic. You'll still have an important role, Mason. We value your experience and hands-on knowledge. You just won't have to worry about the business side anymore. You can focus on what you're good at. I stood up slowly, my appetite completely gone. Let me get this straight. After dedicating my entire adult life to this company, working 60-hour weeks, sacrificing my personal relationships, and helping grow the business to what it is today, I'm being demoted to essentially the same position I had 5 years ago, but now reporting to my younger brother who has a fraction of my experience. You're not being demoted, Mom insisted. Your title and compensation will actually increase. You're just being placed where your skills can best serve the company. My skills? I repeated. You mean my ability to actually build things while Trevor sits in an office making PowerPoints? This attitude is exactly why we made this decision, Dad said, his voice hardening. Leadership requires maturity and professionalism, not emotional reactions. I looked around the table at my family, the people I trusted implicitly, worked alongside faithfully, and believed in completely. In that moment, I saw them clearly for the first time. This wasn't a recent decision, this had been the plan all along. Trevor had always been the golden child, the one destined for greatness, while I was just the reliable workhorse. I see, I said finally, my voice unnaturally calm. Thank you for your honesty. So you understand our decision? Mom asked hopefully. Perfectly, I replied. If you'll excuse me, I have some thinking to do. Mason, don't leave like this. Dad called as I headed for the door. Let's talk this through. I think you've said everything that needs saying, I answered without turning around. You're not leadership material, Mason. Message received loud and clear. I walked out to my truck, got in, and sat there for several minutes, staring at the house my hands had helped build. 14 years of loyalty, of putting the company first, of believing my parents' vague promises about, someday, all of it amounted to nothing in the end. As I drove home that night, one thought crystallized in my mind. If I wasn't leadership material in their eyes, perhaps it was time to prove them wrong elsewhere. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My entire future had been ripped away in a single conversation. By sunrise, I'd moved through shock and hurt to a cold, clear anger that focused my thoughts. At my kitchen table, I opened my laptop and began typing a formal resignation letter. No emotional language, no accusations, just a professional notification that I would be leaving Reynolds Construction. Effective 2 weeks from today. I printed it, signed it, and placed it in an envelope. Then I made a list of everything I needed to collect from my office, projects I needed to hand off, and contacts I should notify personally. Reynolds Construction had been my whole life, but I refused to leave chaos in my wake, no matter how justified it might feel in the moment. At precisely 8 o'clock, I walked into the office. Several employees greeted me with the usual friendly banter, unaware that anything had changed. I nodded and smiled mechanically as I made my way to Dad's office. He was already there, looking tired. Maybe he hadn't slept either. Mason, he said, straightening in his chair. About last night. I placed the envelope on his desk. My resignation, effective 2 weeks from today. I'll ensure all my projects are properly transitioned. He stared at the envelope as if it might bite him. Don't be hasty. We can work something out. There's nothing to work out. You and Mom have made your decision. I'm making mine. Is this about the title? We could call you co-president or something similar. I shook my head. This isn't about titles. It's about respect and recognition. I won't stay where my contributions are so fundamentally undervalued. Mason, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. In fact, this is the most reasonable I've felt in years. I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. I'll be clearing out my office today. I'll work remotely for the remaining 2 weeks to transition my projects. I spent the morning methodically packing 14 years of my professional life into cardboard boxes. Photos from job sites, awards for projects I'd managed, notebooks filled with ideas and solutions to problems we'd faced over the years. Each item carried memories, and by midday, my office was nearly bare. Lisa, our receptionist for the past decade, stopped by my door, her face concerned. Are the rumors true? You're leaving? Word traveled fast in a company our size. Yes, Lisa. It's time for me to move on. But why? Everyone knows this place runs because of you. I just smiled sadly. Things change. Could you ask Jim and Carlos to come see me? I need to brief them on the Highland project. Throughout the day, a steady stream of employees stopped by, each reaction a mixture of shock and concern. These people had been my second family for years, and saying goodbye was harder than I'd anticipated. Trevor appeared around 3 o'clock, looking uncomfortable but trying to maintain an air of authority. Dad told me about your resignation, he said, leaning against the doorframe of my now empty office. I think you're overreacting. Do you? I continued packing without looking up. This transition would have been smoother with your cooperation. We still value your input and experience. I finally stopped and faced him. Trevor, let me give you some advice from someone who's actually run this business. Leadership isn't given, it's earned. Every day, on every job site, with every decision. The people here don't follow orders because of a title on a business card. They give their best because they trust and respect the person giving those orders. He shifted uncomfortably. I have their respect. No, you have their compliance because you're the boss's son. There's a difference. You'll learn that soon enough. Mom handled my exit paperwork with the same businesslike efficiency she applied to everything. No emotion, just forms to sign and procedures to follow. Your non-compete clause remains in effect. She reminded me. You can't work for a direct competitor for 12 months within a 50-mile radius. I'm aware of the terms I signed. I replied coolly. I've never broken my word. Unlike some people. She flinched slightly but recovered quickly. This is business, Mason, not personal. It stopped being just business the moment my family decided I wasn't good enough to lead the company I helped build. My final act before leaving was conducting exit interviews with project managers, documenting the status of every active job and making notes about potential issues that might arise. Professional to the end, that was the standard I'd always held myself to. As I packed the last of my personal items, my lucky hard hat from my first job as foreman, the framed blueprint of my first solo project, and the plaque from the Home Builders Association naming me Construction Manager of the Year, Dad appeared in the doorway. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I do. I closed the box and taped it shut. For 14 years, I believed I was building my future. Now I need to actually do that somewhere I'm valued. We do value you. Son. Not enough. I picked up the box and walked past him. Good luck, Dad. Trevor's going to need it. Walking out of the building that had been my second home felt surreal. Some employees gathered in the parking lot, offering awkward goodbyes and promises to stay in touch. I loaded the last box into my truck, took one final look at the Reynolds Construction sign, and drove away from the only career I'd ever known. That first weekend of unemployment was a strange mix of freedom and terror. I slept past 6 for the first time in years, went for a long run, and then sat on my patio staring at my phone, wondering what came next. I had savings, I'd always been careful with money, but the future loomed as a blank, uncertain space. By Sunday night, my phone was buzzing regularly with messages from concerned employees asking what had happened and if I was okay. I answered each one honestly but without bitterness. No matter how I felt about the family betrayal, I wouldn't poison the well for those still working there. What surprised me most were the calls from clients. Apparently, word had spread quickly, and several of our regular customers wanted to know if my departure would affect their projects. Reynolds Construction is still in good hands, I told each of them, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. I'm just pursuing new opportunities. By Monday morning, I'd received 3 calls from competitors offering positions. Apparently, my value in the industry was far better recognized outside my family business than within it. The realization was both validating and painful. As I reviewed these offers, I began to understand something fundamental. I hadn't just been an employee at Reynolds Construction, I'd been its backbone. And now it was time to see if I could build something of my own. The call from Marcus Henderson came on Tuesday morning, just 4 days after I'd walked out of Reynolds Construction. Mason Reynolds, he said when I answered. The man of the hour. Got time for lunch today? Marcus owned Henderson Building Group, our biggest local competitor. We'd known each other for years through industry events and had a relationship based on mutual respect, despite being competitors. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Marcus, I replied. Non-compete clause. He chuckled. Lunch isn't against any contract I've ever seen. Giovanni's at noon. My treat. Curiosity got the better of me. I'll be there. Giovanni's was upscaled by construction industry standards, the kind of place where business deals happened over pasta and wine rather than burgers and beer. Marcus was already seated when I arrived, his weathered face breaking into a smile as he stood to shake my hand. The construction world's been buzzing about your exit, he said after we'd ordered. Never thought I'd see the day when Mason Reynolds wasn't at Reynolds Construction. That makes two of us, I admitted. Want to tell me what happened? I gave him the abbreviated version, keeping the emotional aspects to a minimum. Marcus listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. Family business, he sighed when I finished. Blessing and curse rolled into one. My own kids want nothing to do with construction. One's a doctor, the other's in finance. At least they didn't pretend to want the business only to push you aside, I said. Marcus leaned forward. Here's why I asked you to lunch, Mason. I'm 68 years old. Built Henderson from nothing, just like your dad did with Reynolds. Difference is, I don't have a succession plan. Are you selling? Considering it. Got some corporate offers, but the thought of my company becoming just another division in some national conglomerate turns my stomach. He took a sip of water. Then I heard you were suddenly available. I'm not following. I'm offering you a partnership, Mason. 51% stays with me for now, 49% goes to you. We renamed it Henderson Reynolds Building Group. After 3 years, if things go well, you get the option to buy me out completely. I nearly choked on my bread. You can't be serious. Dead serious. I need someone who knows this business inside and out, who has relationships with suppliers and clients, and who has the respect of the workers. That's you? He slid a folder across the table. Terms are all in there. Have your lawyer look it over. I opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. The offer was genuine and generous. Why me? Marcus laughed. Because you're exactly what your father said you're not, leadership material. I've watched you build Reynolds into what it is today. Your father may be too blind to see your value, but I'm not. There's that non-compete clause. I reminded him. Look at page 4. I'm not hiring you as an employee. You'd be coming in as a partner, with your own investment. Different legal territory. I've had my lawyers check it thoroughly. I closed the folder. I need time to think about this. Take a week, Marcus said. But don't take too long. Opportunity doesn't knock twice, especially in this business. On my drive home, my mind raced with possibilities. Partnership in an established company. With a path to full ownership, it was more than I dared hope for so quickly. But something held me back from immediate acceptance. I needed to process everything that had happened before making such a major decision. The next day, I received an unexpected text message. Coffee? For old time's sake. Sophia. Sophia Reynolds, no relation, and I had dated seriously for almost 2 years before breaking up 3 years ago. She was an architect who had occasionally worked with Reynolds Construction. Our relationship had ended when my workaholic tendencies became too much for her. We met at a small cafe downtown, and seeing her again hit me harder than I'd expected. She looked exactly the same, dark hair cut in a practical bob, intelligent eyes, and that smile that had once been the highlight of my day. I heard what happened, she said after we'd exchanged awkward greetings. Construction community gossip travels fast. Seems everyone knows my business these days. For what it's worth, I think your parents made a massive mistake. She stirred her latte. You were that company's heart and soul. Apparently heart and soul don't matter as much as an MBA. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. So what's next for Mason Reynolds? I mentioned Marcus's offer, watching her reaction carefully. That's incredible, she said, genuinely pleased. Henderson builds quality projects. You'd be a good fit there. I'm still deciding. Everything's happened so fast. Sophia hesitated, then said, My firm's expanded since we last spoke. We've moved beyond residential into commercial and healthcare facilities. If you do join Henderson, maybe there's potential for collaboration. I'd like that, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. As we continued talking, I realized how much the family business had consumed my identity. Every decision, every relationship, every moment of my adult life had revolved around Reynolds Construction. Perhaps this forced separation, painful as it was, offered an opportunity to rediscover who I was beyond the company name. "You know what I remember most about us," Sophia said as we prepared to leave. "How you lit up when talking about your projects. Not the business aspects, but the actual building, creating something lasting. Don't lose that, Mason. It's who you are." Her words stayed with me as I spent the next few days contemplating Marcus's offer. I worked out more, slept better than I had in years, and reconnected with friends I neglected while working 60-hour weeks. For the first time since I was 18, I had the space to think about what I truly wanted. On day 6 after leaving Reynolds Construction, I received a call from Scott Williams, our primary concrete supplier. "Mason, we've got a situation," he said without preamble. "The Westfield development order is all wrong. Trevor changed the specifications without updating the engineering plans. We're pouring tomorrow, and this could be a disaster. Scott, I don't work for Reynolds anymore. I know, but nobody there seems to understand the severity of the problem. The engineers specified 6-inch reinforcement spacing for that soil type, but the order shows standard 8-inch. If they pour as specified, that foundation won't pass inspection." I sighed. "Did you talk to Trevor?" he said, and I quote, "The engineers are being overly cautious. We're optimizing costs. Mason, that's a $3 million project. If they have to tear out and repour that foundation, it's not my problem anymore, Scott." There was silence on the line. "I've known you 15 years, Mason. You've never been the type to let a project fail, even when it wasn't your responsibility." He was right, and we both knew it. "I'll make a call," I conceded. But that's it. After hanging up, I stared at my phone for a long moment before calling Trevor. It went straight to voicemail. I tried the office and got Lisa. "Mason! Everyone misses you. It's been challenging here this week." "So I've heard. Is my father available?" "He's in a meeting with Trevor and the Westfield clients. There seems to be some confusion about the foundation specs." I thanked her and hung up. Then called Marcus Henderson. "I've made my decision," I told him. "I accept your offer, with one addition to the terms." "I'm listening." "I want to bring in Sophia Reynolds as our exclusive architectural partner for commercial projects. Her firm does excellent work, and it would give us an edge in the bidding process." Marcus didn't hesitate. "Done. Welcome aboard, partner. We'll sign the paperwork tomorrow." As I ended the call, my phone buzzed with a text from Scott. "Crisis averted. Your dad stepped in and corrected the order. But this is just the beginning of the problems over here." I set my phone down, feeling a strange mix of concern and detachment. Reynolds Construction had been my life for so long that it was hard not to care about its fate. But now I had a new path forward, one where my experience and leadership were not just recognized but valued. The company I'd helped build was no longer mine to worry about. Whatever happened next was in Trevor's hands now, for better or worse. Exactly 1 week after I cleared out my office at Reynolds Construction, my phone rang at 6:30 in the morning. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer. But 14 years of conditioning, of being the person who solved problems before dawn, was hard to break. "Hello? Mason." Dad's voice sounded strained. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." I kept my tone neutral. "The Westfield project, we're having some issues. The client's threatening to pull the contract." "What happened to the foundation?" "How did you know about that?" Construction community gossip travels fast. I echoed Sophia's words. "What's the problem now?" "Trevor assigned Jensen as project manager. Jensen quit yesterday, said Trevor's micromanaging made the job impossible. 3 other crew members walked out with him. Jensen had been with us for 12 years. He was as reliable as they came. That's unfortunate. Mason, I know you're upset with us, and you have every right to be. But this is a $3 million contract. If we lose it, what exactly are you asking me to do, Dad? Come back. Just for this project. Temporary consulting basis. Name your price. The desperation in his voice was almost satisfying. Almost. What does Trevor think about this request? Dad hesitated. He doesn't know I'm calling. Look, son. I may have made a mistake. May have? I interrupted. You told me I wasn't leadership material and handed the company I helped build to someone with a fraction of my experience. That wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated decision. Mason, please. The business is at stake here. Isn't that what you have a CEO for? Trevor's the leader now, right? Let him lead. There was a long silence before Dad spoke again. I understand. I'm sorry to have bothered you. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed, emotions warring within me. Part of me wanted to rush in and save the day, prove once and for all that I was indispensable. Another part, the wounded, angry part, took satisfaction in their struggles. I chose neither. Instead, I showered, dressed, and drove to Henderson Building Group to sign my partnership papers. This was my future now. Over the next few days, news from Reynolds Construction continued to trickle in through industry contacts. The problems were multiplying at an alarming rate. Trevor had implemented a new bidding system that consistently underestimated labor costs, resulting in project bids that couldn't possibly be profitable. 3 more experienced employees had quit, taking positions with other local contractors. A major supplier had put Reynolds on credit hold after Trevor attempted to renegotiate payment terms that had been established for years. Dad was trying to step back in and right the ship, but systems had been changed, relationships damaged, and trust eroded. The smooth operation I'd helped build over 14 years was unraveling in a matter of weeks. Trevor, meanwhile, had adopted an aggressive management style that alienated both employees and clients. His business school theories weren't translating well to the practical realities of construction. He sent a memo about synergistic efficiency paradigms yesterday. Lisa told me during one of our occasional check-in calls. Nobody knows what he's talking about half the time. My phone became a ticker tape of Reynolds Construction's downward spiral. 10 days after my departure. The Crawford project is 3 weeks behind schedule. Trevor fired the foreman for insubordination when he suggested the timeline was unrealistic. 2 weeks after, Catherine discovered errors in the new accounting procedures. Some invoices have been paid twice, others not at all. 18 days after, Trevor hired 3 new project managers from outside the industry. None of them know the first thing about construction. I documented everything but took no action. My focus was on my new role at Henderson Reynolds Building Group, where I was already implementing improvements based on my years of experience. 3 weeks after I left, Dad called again. Westfield canceled their contract, he said without preamble. $3 million gone. Plus, they're considering legal action for delays and breach of contract. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and genuinely meant it. Regardless of my personal feelings, I took no pleasure in seeing a good company falter. Mason, I was wrong. The words seemed to physically pain him. You were our leadership material. The best kind. The kind that builds from the ground up, that understands every aspect of the business, that earns respect rather than demanding it. It's a little late for that realization, isn't it? It's never too late to admit a mistake. Come back. Not as a project manager or consultant. As president. Trevor can keep his CEO title if that matters to him, but you'd have operational control. For a brief moment, I considered it. The pull of the familiar, of the company I'd helped build, was strong. But then I remembered the look on their faces when they told me I wasn't good enough. The casual dismissal of 14 years of dedication. I can't do that, Dad. I've signed a partnership agreement with Henderson. We're rebranding as Henderson Reynolds Building Group. You what? His shock was audible. That's a direct competitor. Your non-compete clause doesn't apply to partnership arrangements. Your lawyers can confirm. This is how you repay our family? By joining forces with our biggest competitor. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Repay the family? I gave 14 years of my life to Reynolds Construction. I helped build it into what it is today. And my reward was being told I wasn't good enough to lead it. So yes, I found somewhere that values what I bring to the table. Catherine and I built that company from nothing. Everything you know. You learned from us. And everything you're losing without me. Funny how that works. After that conversation, the calls from Reynolds Construction became more desperate and more frequent. Trevor left angry voicemails accusing me of sabotaging the business. Mom sent formal emails suggesting we discuss transition issues. Dad alternated between apologies and recriminations. I responded to none of them. My focus was entirely on building my new future. For weeks after my departure, I received a call from Richard Westfield himself. Mason, I pulled our contract with Reynolds, he said. Your brother's a disaster. Would Henderson be interested in bidding on the project? Same specs, same timeline, but with you at the helm. I believe we would, Mr. Westfield. I'll have a proposal to you by tomorrow. Looking forward to it. When I shared the news with Marcus, he laughed until tears came to his eyes. Poetic justice. He wheezed. Your first major contract is one that Reynolds just lost. The industry fallout continued. Within 6 weeks of my departure, Reynolds Construction had lost 2 more major clients, received a cease and desist letter from a supplier over unpaid invoices, and seen their workforce reduced by almost 30% through resignations and layoffs. Trevor finally called me directly after nearly 2 months of chaos. This is your fault. He spat when I answered. You've been poisoning clients against us, stealing our employees, undermining everything I'm trying to build. I haven't done anything, Trevor. I've been focused on my new venture. You must have sabotaged something before you left. Things don't just fall apart like this. Actually, they do, when the wrong person is put in charge. Leadership isn't just about fancy degrees and PowerPoint presentations. It's about understanding the business from the ground up, building relationships, and earning respect. You can't learn that in business school. Dad wants to sell the company, he said, his voice suddenly small. Says it's not worth the stress anymore. That news hit me harder than I expected. Reynolds Construction had been more than a job or even a family business. It had been my identity for so long. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. Are you? Isn't this exactly what you wanted? To prove us wrong by watching us fail? No, Trevor. What I wanted was recognition for my contributions and a leadership role I'd earned. What I wanted was for my family to value my experience and dedication. I never wanted Reynolds Construction to fail. I helped build it, remember? There was a long silence before he spoke again. He's talking to Henderson about acquisition options. The irony was almost too perfect. That would be Marcus's decision now. I'm just a partner. A partner who stands to gain control of our family business through the back door. There is no R anymore, Trevor. You made sure of that when you convinced Mom and Dad I wasn't leadership material. I ended the call and sat for a long time, contemplating how dramatically my life had changed in just 2 months. From heir apparent to outcast to competitor, and potentially, full circle to owner again, albeit through a very different path than I'd imagined. But my satisfaction wasn't in the possibility of reclaiming Reynolds Construction through acquisition. It was improving through actions rather than words. Exactly what kind of leadership material I was made of. 6 months after walking out of Reynolds Construction, I stood at the podium in the ballroom of the Grand Hyatt, accepting the Commercial Project of the Year award from the Regional Builders Association. The Westfield development, completed on time and under budget by Henderson Reynolds Building Group, had become a showcase project for innovative design and construction techniques. "This award belongs to our entire team," I said, looking out at the tables where our employees sat. "Great construction isn't about one person's vision. It's about bringing together talented people who take pride in their craft and giving them the resources and support they need to excel." As I returned to our table, Sophia squeezed my hand. Our professional collaboration had rekindled our personal relationship, and this time, I was making sure to maintain a healthy work-life balance. No more 60-hour weeks or missed dinners. "Proud of you," she whispered. The transformation in my professional life had been remarkable. Marcus and I had integrated our strengths seamlessly. His financial acumen and established reputation combined with my operational expertise and industry relationships. We'd retained the best elements of both companies while implementing improvements that had positioned us as the premier construction firm in the region. Several former Reynolds employees had joined us, bringing valuable skills and institutional knowledge. We'd also created an apprenticeship program that was addressing the skilled labor shortage affecting the industry, something I'd wanted to implement for years but could never get approved at Reynolds. The partnership with Sophia's architectural firm had proven especially fruitful. Her innovative designs paired with our construction expertise had won us contracts for a regional medical center, a downtown revitalization project, and a sustainable corporate campus. Business was booming, but more importantly, I was genuinely happy. The constant pressure to prove myself to my family had lifted, replaced by the satisfaction of building something that reflected my own values and vision. As we mingled at the after-party, I spotted them across the room, Mom, Dad, and Trevor, seated at the Reynolds construction table. They'd managed to avoid bankruptcy through drastic downsizing, returning to residential construction exclusively, and selling off equipment and property to stabilize their finances. Dad caught my eye and nodded slightly. I returned the gesture but made no move to approach them. We hadn't spoken in months, not since he'd approached Marcus about acquisition options and been politely declined. Later, as the crowd thinned, Dad intercepted me near the bar. "Congratulations on the award," he said, looking older than I remembered. "The Westfield project is impressive." "Thank you." An awkward silence stretched between us before he spoke again. "Your mother and I were wrong, Mason. About everything. I'm not too proud to admit that now." "I appreciate that." Trevor's taken a position with Harrington Development Group. Corporate construction management. Suits him better, I think. And Reynolds Construction? Scaled back to what it was when I started, small residential projects, manageable crews. Catherine and I are running it together again until retirement. I nodded, unsure what he expected me to say. "We miss you, son. Not just at the business. As family." The simple admission cracked something in my chest, a hardness that had formed around the wound of their betrayal. "I miss you too. Sometimes. Could we maybe have dinner sometime? You and Sophia, Catherine and me? No business talk, just family?" I considered for a moment. "I need to think about it." "Of course. Take all the time you need." He handed me a business card, not the glossy Reynolds Construction card I was familiar with, but a simple white card with just his name and personal number. "When you're ready." Watching him walk back to join Mom at their table, I felt a complex mix of emotions. The anger that had fueled me for months had largely dissipated, replaced by something like pity. They'd lost far more than a business advantage when they pushed me away. They'd fractured our family and tarnished a legacy built over decades. Sophia appeared at my side. "Everything okay?" "Getting there," I said, pocketing the card. "He wants to have dinner sometime." "And how do you feel about that?" "I'm not sure yet. Part of me wants to maintain the distance. Another part recognizes that holding on to resentment only hurts me in the long run." She linked her arm through mine. "No rush to decide. You've built a new life that doesn't revolve around their approval anymore." She was right. The transformation hadn't just been professional, It had been personal as well. I'd rediscovered who I was beyond Reynolds Construction, beyond being Richard and Catherine's son, beyond the role I'd been assigned in the family business. In the following weeks, I focused on consolidating our success and planning for the future. Marcus was gradually transitioning toward retirement, which would eventually make me majority owner. We'd implemented a profit-sharing plan for long-term employees and were exploring expansion opportunities in neighboring counties. 3 months after the awards ceremony, I finally called the number on Dad's card and arranged dinner at a neutral restaurant. The conversation was awkward at first but gradually warmed as we stayed away from business topics and focused on rebuilding personal connections. "We're selling the house," Mom mentioned over dessert. "Too big for just the two of us now." "Where will you go?" I asked. "Condo downtown. Less maintenance, closer to everything." "Sounds sensible." The house had been a symbol of Reynolds Construction's success, the showpiece project I'd helped build. Its sale felt like the closing of a chapter. As we prepared to leave, Dad hesitated. Then asked, "Would you consider consulting on our riverfront project?" "Just advisory. We've hit some engineering challenges that we could use your expertise on." Before I could answer, Mom added quickly, "We'd pay your standard consulting rate, of course. This would be strictly professional." I looked at Sophia, who gave me a subtle nod of support. "Send me the details," I said. "I'll see if I can help." It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. The wound had healed but left a scar. Yet there was a certain symmetry to it all. They'd needed me all along but hadn't realized it until I was gone. Now they were acknowledging my value on my terms, not theirs. 2 years after walking away from Reynolds Construction, I stood at the construction site of what would become Henderson Reynolds corporate headquarters, a modern, sustainable building that reflected our company's values and vision for the future. Beside me, Sophia held the rolled blueprints, her engagement ring catching the morning sunlight. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, noticing my contemplative mood. "How sometimes the worst moments of your life lead to the best ones," I replied. "If my parents hadn't told me I wasn't leadership material, I might never have discovered what I'm truly capable of." "Their loss, my gain," she smiled. As I surveyed the site, our site, I felt a profound sense of peace. The betrayal that had once threatened to break me had instead forced me to rebuild myself into something stronger, more authentic, and ultimately more successful than I could have been while living in the shadow of family expectations. The construction crew waited for my signal to begin the day's work. These men and women had chosen to follow me, not because of my last name or title, but because they respected my knowledge, experience, and leadership. "Let's build something great," I told them, and meant every word. Have you ever had to walk away from something you loved to find something better? I never thought leaving my family business would lead to my greatest success. But sometimes the hardest decisions create the most incredible opportunities. If you've faced similar challenges, share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about finding your true worth when others fail to see it. Remember, you are always more capable than anyone else's assessment of you. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the courage to believe in yourself even when those closest to you don't.